to my dungeon.
Welcome to Cauldron's Crypt. I'm your host, Master Cauldron. If you're new to the show, we use our combined 30 years of experience to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions or visit the crypt at cauldronscrypt.com. On this episode of The Crypt, we're going to explore polyamory. But first, hello, fun size.
Hello, Master Cauldron.
How are you today?
Pretty good. Started the day off with a triple shot of espresso, and then I got you growling at me.
Oh.
And you know I like that sound, so...
Yeah, I'm a little growly today, but here we are anyway. This is going to be a pretty simply laid out topic. You've done a great job putting this one together as always. I want to get into it. So let's go ahead with the rules to love by and jump into the topic. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, KNKI, that's KNKI from the KNKI app, available on all platforms. That stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. And rule number 3, that wonderful quote from Mr. Paul Young, submission is not about authority and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. So, you and I are both polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
Throw out that definition.
Okay, so the simplest way to approach polyamory as a definition is to break it down to its two parts. Poly simply means many, and amor means love or lovers. Polyamory is the practice of wanting or having more than one intimate partnership with the knowledge and awareness of all parties involved. And we're going to get into that knowledge and awareness of all parties involved a little bit later when we discuss the morality of polyamory. Do you want to give us what kind of types there are? Because I know there's a couple types, and we practice some very different types ourselves.
Yeah, and this is where it gets sticky for me in some ways, because I look at it very defined as one way. Sometimes my boundaries can be a little bit closed off when it comes to my personal practices and how I think others should practice too. So... I'll try to remain a little more open for this conversation because all the information does need to be provided. But sometimes those who are polyamorous, who have established committed relationships with one or more of their partners, will refer to the relationships as an open relationship. Now, when dating, this means that the parties involved have consented to one or both of them dating other people. Open marriages also occur in which one spouse or both spouses have agreed to the same thing. So this can occur within the BDSM lifestyle, of course. And when a polyamorous person has a play partner, a dominant, submissives, along with any other forms of romantic partnership, including vanilla ones. So that leads us to what kind of relationships these can be. The first one being open. If all partners have consented to seeking out or have intimate relationships, then the relationship is known as open polyamorous relationship. So everyone involved consents to everyone else having other relationships. The second one would be the open/closed. If only one party of the primary relationship, say marriage, such as mine, is polyamorous, I am, my wife is not, then this is often known as an open-closed relationship. This can happen in a BDSM relationship when a dom may have a primary submissive that has consented to not scene with other people, but the dom will still scene with others. Or in the case of a harem, which I know you certainly do not consent to.
No, I don't consent to being part of one. I know that you have started seeking one yourself in your open-closed relationship. It's not for me. It's okay, but it's not for me.
It's funny because I never really thought about it.
Yep. You never really thought about it, and then you and I tried. Our DS relationship was ultimately a fail, but it got you to evolve as a person, so
I disagree.
I'm happy.
I disagree that it was a fail.
It was a fail in the sense that you and I cannot have a dominant submissive relationship. That sense, it was a fail. No. In the sense that we both learned and grew as people, it's an absolute success.
I think it was very much a success. as I've said, anytime you can go through something and come out the other side not hating each other, learning from it and becoming closer, I consider that a success. But that's just me.
Harems, they're simply top-bottom relationships in which typically the top has several bottoms which are committed in some way to serving that top regularly. It's not a matter of you lock up a bunch of slaves or something. It's not like that. There's no Middle Eastern Arabian Nights thing going on for the most part. So sometimes there can be, depending on who's running it. So I just want to clear that up a little bit.
Yeah, it's always good to, well, I love those definitions. So anytime you want to throw one out there for anything, which leads to the final one, closed. A closed polyamorous relationship is what happens when the partners have all consented to stop seeking other relationships outside of those that have already been formed. I think of this like an extension upon traditional monogamy because the commitments are there, though the relationship contains more than just two people. It's a polypod that's locked down, basically. Nobody is going to go outside of those relationships that are already founded.
To speak personally about what I have, what I'm moving towards, and then what I hope to have, because I feel like it's going to really illustrate how you can differ in your types as you evolve. So currently my husband and I have an open polyamorous relationship. We both seek other partners actively. We are moving towards having an open closed relationship in which the two of us will still be open, but we're moving towards having a submissive that we share with each other that will have a closed relationship. But eventually we hope to have that submissive, two of us, of course, in our marriage, and hope to enter into a relationship in which I have a dominant and then close it off. Just four people. So I really feel like that illustrates the evolution that you can have between the types, depending on what you want and need.
Yeah, and I think the way that you're talking about with how your relationship is evolving is really, from a BDSM standpoint, how a lot of people want it in one form or another. They're looking for that unicorn, as it said. So I think that probably, in my experience in talking to most people, most practitioners that are not heavy players, I guess, I don't mean the word player in a derogatory sense there, is that's how they want it. That's what they're looking for. And I am too, just in a more broader sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's hard to find.
Yes, it really is.
When you get so many personalities involved, it's really hard to find. And then, you get into so many different aspects and things that we're going to talk about here that can cause some issues later on that we're going to reference too. One of the things that you put in here that I find is very important that people struggle with is the morality and the traditional upbringing that a lot of people have, especially here in the South, that they struggle with. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, getting into monogamy and how things look to the monogamist?
Well, often they look very negatively upon polyamory, monogamists do. They often consider polyamorous as cheaters or simply don't understand how we balance multiple relationships at any given time. There's this huge difference between being a moral polyamorous and a cheater. And polyamory is something that is communicated openly and honestly. Cheaters don't communicate what they're doing, and that's really the huge difference there. You can't consent to being cheated on, but you can consent to being in a polyamorous relationship with someone, or you can consent to being monogamous and having a polyamorous partner. It can work, but only with consent and communication. And there's a huge drift of morality there. Personally, as a very ethical polyamorous, I do find cheating to be very immoral and very wrong. I have unfortunately been cheated on, and it is a very difficult thing to go through. It is very painful, and that's where the immorality of cheating comes from versus the morality of polyamory, of openly saying, I need other relationships, can you deal with this? And then allowing the person to either choose and consent to stay with you or choose to walk away if that's something that they cannot handle. And that's very important, to have a partner that can handle your polyamorous lifestyle or is polyamorous themselves, making sure that you can handle it. And it doesn't matter. You can walk away from those relationships because you can't change what a person needs or who they are. So just keep that in mind when you're communicating these things.
Yeah. And that's what people don't understand, which is exactly everything that you just said. But to kind of kick the tires on that one more time, a lot of the people that I talk to that don't understand, well, why would you get married if you're going to sleep with other people? Or why would you get married if you're going to be in relationships with other people? And they always have some kind of weird inflection and draw when they say that. People. Because they just don't understand.
Like there's millions of people that we must all be doing these things with, when in fact it might be as simple as 2 or 3 or just one more.
Yeah. And and the thing is it doesn't matter how many people we're doing it with, as long as we're openly communicating. But to answer that, my wife is my best friend. I love her dearly. There is a commitment there that is forever, thick and thin, sickness and health, all the vows that we made to each other. But we also realize that no one person can fulfill every need that another person has. That is, to me, and I don't mean to be offensive to those that listen that are monogamous. If you can have all your needs met by one person, you found that one person that does that for you, fine. I don't judge that. Please don't judge me and my decisions or my needs. But I just don't. To me, that's what I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how anybody can have their needs completely met by one person. I'm a very dynamic individual. And my wife was actually the one, you and I had conversations about the whole harem thing, but she was the one that looked at me one day and was like, yeah, you need a harem because you have so many different needs. You are such, and she used the term dynamic individual. There's so many different aspects of things that I'm very passionate about. And a lot of them are so different that it's rare to find any one person that is also going to enjoy a conversation about these things. And it's not just intellectually, it's also sexually. And that's the thing for me, polyamory, when I break that down for me personally, and a lot of people use it just to mean an open sexual relationship. For me, it's many loves, not lovers. So these relationships are not about going out and having one night stands or just fun sexual play partners. It's about connecting with people, developing a relationship, and growing that love and respect for one another and having some level of commitment to each other in that relationship. So that's where I said in the beginning that my view of it, my definition of it is a little different from some people's. It's a little bit stricter. And that's because also knowing the swinger community, and a lot of them will use the term polyamorous when they're going to orgies and these big swinger parties and conventions. And to me, that's just not it. That's an open relationship. That's an open marriage, but that's not polyamory to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Not quite thoughts on the swingers or orgies or any of that. People do what they do, and I have no problem with it.
Well, no, I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I take issue with them using the term polyamory because that's, amory, more love. That's, not lover.
To me, because sex doesn't include love all the time, lover actually is a sexual act that includes love. So for me, the term lover, as far as polyamory goes, does fit. But you can also just
for a one night stand
if you're feeling it in that moment.
Well,
I'm a lot looser with that term.
I guess I could see that. I've often been compared to David Duchovny's character in Californication. There's a particular line in one of the episodes where he's arguing with somebody about all the women that he's been with. I believe it was his baby's mama. And he says that whether it was for one night or a lifetime, I've loved every woman I've ever been with. It's just in different ways and different levels of intensity. And because of, I guess, the passion and the care that I put into that, and that can be exhibited in many, many ways, some of which don't seem like care or passion, but
they are for you. That's what counts.
Completely animalistic. Yeah, no human emotion or expression involved. But I mean, from that aspect, sure, I can see it in that way. But typically, no, I don't, and again, this is just me. I'm wanting to give you, and when I say you in this case, I mean crypters, the opportunity to hear the opposing viewpoints, and you decide, and however you decide, that's you. That's fine. I say all the time, it's yours. Make it yours. Own it. So I don't have a problem, Fun Size, with how you define it. And I know that you don't have a problem with how I prefer to look at it.
Not at all.
It's just the same, except different. So moving. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to let you move on. I'm going to share more with the listeners. So
bossy britches.
What?
I said, you bossy britches.
I am. I'm going to go put on my corset, my leather pants, and my heels and get out a whip if I need to. But to get back into what monogamists often say, why would you get married? My own personal reasons and my husband's reasons. Just like you and your amazing wife, we love each other. We are each other's best friends, but we are so much more. But when it came down to it, we were both polyamorous when we met. And that was something that was established and that we required for the entire extent of our relationship. And the reason that we both are polyamorous is a shared reason. And it's that we had monogamous relationships in which we ended up feeling like we had wasted our time and our energy and our love on some very abusive relationships, unfortunately. And we both had hit a point after those relationships where we said that our hearts are too full of love, that we have too much to give and share with the world and be shared with the world, that we will not close ourselves off to the experiences and the people around us if we can actually find more love in our hearts for them and them for us. And that's our reason, is that we simply feel like we just have too much love. And it's not about sex, because there are people that I do have loving relationships with that have no sex in them. They have no BDSM in them. And it's very important to remember that.
Yeah. Well, some people would look at that and say, well, then they're just friends. They're just, your best friends.
Yes, but it goes beyond friendship.
Yeah.
You can have polyamorous love, and you can have familial love, you can have romantic love, and you can have intimate love. And they are four very different things. You can have romantic love that is separate from all those things, creating a polyamorous relationship with that person, and never get into any of that. And you can also combine it with other types of love, like familial or platonic love.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't get that is by the very loose definition.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, but that's really what I'm considering. What you're saying now is a very loose definition of it, but it is an honest definition, and I don't want that to be mistaken. But everyone is polyamorous, and they will really, really want to argue against that, but everybody has love for more than just one person. It's just in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that can create so much confusion in people. And I'm not trying to convince anybody that this is the way that they need to be. Don't get me wrong. It's just a conversation and a point of view that I get a lot of questions about this one specifically. Like, how does that work? Why does someone need that? Why is that a thing? How does it not cause problems? And when you're first figuring it all out, it can cause problems. Most people go through a very painful adjustment period going from monogamous to polyamorous.
I can honestly say that for both me and my husband, Irish MT Dragon, we both went into frenzy when ours adjusted.
Yeah, it can definitely create some interesting energies.
Yes.
To say the least. Yeah, weird energies. Everything moving about, getting used to things, going through some growing pains. My wife says that a lot of life is like giving birth. You have these contractions where you go through this very painful thing, and then expansions. And you're opened up, you're learning more and reaping the rewards of those growing pains. I kind of live by that. It seems to be the natural flow of life for me. Now, certain people are going to need this in their life. Obviously, we're those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And these relationships get created through this honest communication, hard work. And for those who are thinking of jealousy, does jealousy occur?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it occurs. It occurs even when we swear it won't, even when we hope it won't, even when we try so hard not to let it. It happens.
Yes, and especially in the beginning of these relationships. And unfortunately, for most people, when you're moving into these new relationships, when you already have your primary or established one, and we're going to touch on this later, so I'll just abbreviate it, but that NRE makes you do some crazy things, and that will in itself create some havoc and jealousy. What about the myth? And I get this one a lot.
Me too.
The myth that everyone who is part of BDSM is polyamorous.
Yeah, not true. I know quite a few monogamists out there that practice BDSM.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that many newbies coming in, they seem to believe that they must practice polyamory, which simply isn't true. And you might end up feeling like you have to separate your vanilla life from your kinky life. And in this way, you can end up having a vanilla partner while having a BDSM partner as well. And some people aren't practicing polyamory in these cases because they're not discussing it with their vanilla partner. And of course, communication is the best thing on earth for any and every relationship ever and must be a constant. So that can stir the pot of problems in all relationships involved there.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it works for you if you can separate your vanilla lifestyle from your polyamorous and your BDSM lifestyle, if that's what you're trying to do. But problems are going to arise, and you're going to end up ruining those relationships if you don't communicate, or if it's simply not for you. If you are truly a monogamous, yeah, you're just setting yourself up for failure there. Unfortunately, when it comes down to it, if you're monogamous, be a monogamous. If you're polyamorous, be polyamorous. The only way to have these successful relationships of any kind is to discuss it with your partner openly and honestly.
Yep. In these questions that I said earlier, that I get a lot of questions about polyamory from newer people in the lifestyle because they make that assumption is, okay, I'm experimenting with BDSM, but I'm hiding it from my spouse. Well, then you're already starting off wrong. You have to face your fears of judgment and be open and honest about it, unless you just really want to cause your life to implode, which is going to be followed by an explosion, because your marriage will implode, which will explode your entire life, and it will rain down upon every single relationship and aspect that you have. And so when people are messaging me, that is always where I start with that. You've got to share this podcast with them, share the show, help them to understand what it's about, that it's normal, actually. And I think that's what I'm realizing more and more these days, is that what we call BDSM is actually more normative than anybody really wants to admit. And I know there's all these studies that give percentages that anywhere from 40, I've heard, to 80% of Americans or people around the world or whatever, depending on the study, has unknowingly participated in acts of BDSM. And if you've ever had your hair pulled or been scratched or been spanked while you're participating in a sexual act, but it also goes beyond that to the psychological forms of BDSM. And so there are ways to ease people into this, but your life is not going to work if you're not honest with your partner or partners. One of our producers, I'm not going to say which one, whether it's an executive producer, junior producer, whatever, senior producer, but one of them I talked to fairly regularly, and he sent me a message explaining a situation to me and saying, well, I understand your views on fidelity And I did it wrong. I was seeing someone that was married and she was not being honest with her husband about things. And we had had her husband or boyfriend, and they had had a relationship prior to her and this other person getting together. And so they're kind of getting to know each other again. Like, I mean, it had been 10, 15 years, something like that, since they had been together. So he's, right off the bat saying, hey, I understand that I'm screwing up. Can you help me? And then later in the message, he finally says, well, I understand what your advice is going to be. So I've actually, in thinking about it, and I've written this, if I remember correctly, he actually started writing it and then stopped when he realized that, I'm not going to help him because he's not going to follow my advice, which is break it off. Don't get in a relationship with somebody who is not honest with their spouse. And there's a few reasons for that. One, it's just not going to work. Two, they're probably not going to be honest with you either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just bad. So, he came back and wrote and said, after I started writing that, I realized, and I talked to her and said that we can't do this while she's with somebody else. And she agreed. So that relationship that she was having ended. And then they started their relationship a respectful amount of time after that had ended. So yeah, that is what I'm going to say. If that's your question to me, feel free, go ahead and message me, go ahead and message Fun Size and ask, but I know her and she's going to have the same thing for you too. You got to be honest.
Communication.
Yeah. Communication.
I feel like communication, if we counted the number of times that you and I talk about that would be the most discussed subject on this show.
Yeah.
And with good reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've often said that that's what I get the most out of about this lifestyle is the open communication, because I grew up in such a closed household where things weren't talked about. So very important. Anything else on the myth?
Nothing else on the myth. I think we need to move into this NRE, or new relationship energy, that you spoiled for our Kryptonians a little while ago.
Kryptonians.
That's what I'm going to call them. You can call them the Cryptors. I'm calling them the Kryptonians.
Kryptonians. Yeah. Let's hear their opinion on that.
Sure.
Go to the FetLife group. Just search for Cauldron's Crypt on FetLife and take part in that conversation. And somebody be the first to start a thread and see which one you prefer. Give us a vote. Cryptor or Kryptonians? I'd love to hear their responses on that, actually. All right. So I didn't spoil it, though. I just mentioned NRE. I didn't even say what it stands for.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
New relationship energy. The Kinky Cast, another podcast, episode 209, Billy Holder, who is a renowned educator, Frolicon in Atlanta. He did a presentation on polyamory and new relationship energy that is absolutely phenomenal. I recommend that everyone check it out. Again, that's the Kinky Cast, episode 209 with Billy Holder. But finally, my topic on this, NRE. When new relationships are formed, our bodies go through this rush with these chemicals, oxytocin and dopamine, and it gives you such an incredible rush. Your heart's going to pound. You get the butterflies. It can make you lightheaded, give you hot flashes or cold sweats. All of these feelings are what happens when you fall in love. So in polyamory, we actually refer to this as new relationship energy. In the vanilla world, it's falling in love. Now, not that every relationship contains the emotional connection of falling in love, and that's why we say new relationship energy, but it can result in you ignoring your other relationships for a time. It can send you into a bout of frenzy, and that's just about guaranteed to happen. And communication is absolutely the key to overcoming. There's one more time we're going to say communication. It's absolutely the key to overcoming these issues and creating successful relationships. Yeah. Everybody that I know of has experienced these butterflies as falling in love, this new relationship energy, and that is the most detrimental time in all relationships that you're involved in, because they're all going to experience a downswing in the amount of energy that you put into them, because you've got this new toy to play with in whatever way.
Yep. What happens is that you form a connection to this person, whether it's seeing them, talking to them, any of that. And you get that rush of chemicals. So every time you talk to them or you do something that you have connected with them, you get another rush of chemicals and another rush and another rush. And it keeps you obsessed with them because you keep getting high off of this. And yes, it's a natural high. So we're not going to get into the whole drugs thing. We're talking bodily chemicals and hormones that are released naturally. And they do make you high and they make you act high. And it can be very addictive. And for some people that are getting into polyamory, they can actually go into a type of frenzy in which all they do is create new relationships, because as the high starts to wear off 3 to 6 months down the road, where your body's adjusting to the dopamine and oxytocin from that relationship, you can go, oh, hey, my body wants to be high again. I'll go create a new one. And that's also where you get these people that will get married 30 times. I know I have a sister who's been married 6 times because she gets these rushes of oxytocin and dopamine every time she gets a new relationship, and she rides it out through the marriage, and then 6 months into the marriage she goes, oh hey, this isn't fun anymore, and gets divorced. So it can happen.
Well, she may only have one more time legally to get married then.
That's her problem. I really don't judge or care what she does with her life.
Most states are 7 or 10 times depending on the state. But yeah, I've got to admit here, I can be a relationship junkie.
Yep, me too.
And anybody that's honest, because of the feeling that the new relationship gives you, it's a rush. And that's why, as of recent, I have been very, very cautious and slow played the crap out of any new relationship that I'm building. Doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, because you can get this from getting a new job or whatever can create these rush of oxytocin and dopamine. So taking things slow and being very self-aware. My slave back in 2016, though the communication was there was such a rush, and I mean such an incredible rush, more so than what I've ever experienced from any relationship other than my wife, and it would be about the same level as I experienced with her. It created, like I said, though there was that open communication between my wife and I, because of the massive amounts of chemical dumping that was taking place in my brain, I was not thinking straight. And I look back on it and I'm like, this is no different than back when I was an active addict nearly 20 years ago of actual substances, illegal substances. So, yeah, you got to be real careful with that. And from looking back at that and having conversations with her now about things back then, it's caused me to really take everything slow to the point where it really annoys the other people that I'm involved with. But it's important to me to maintain and not get those butterflies and not make stupid decisions. Is going to create issues and ultimately will be the reason that relationship ends up dying out, because I will commit too much time to that person and not enough time to my wife, and make dumb decisions. Even though the communication is there's this dissonance that will take place. I'll say one thing, and what I say, I'm honest about it and I mean it, and that's what I want to do. But then these chemicals hit when I get around this person, and then I just tend to not do what I said. And I know that about myself, and that's really crappy to be, but it's a chemistry thing, and that's how most people are, and they don't even realize it. When I found this episode on the Kinky Cast about new relationship energy, when I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, there are 2 people that need to hear this, because you and I were planning to do this episode. Mm-hmm. So fun size, you got to check this out. This is awesome. This is a great education tool and something that we can touch on. And then I really hope that the cryptors or Kryptonians, I do like that, by the way, that they go over and check out what he has to say there. And then my wife. And like I said, that was in 2016. It's 2018 now that I had that relationship. And she just listened to this a few weeks ago, or we listened to it together on a car ride. And she's going, oh my God, I finally understand so much about what happened in 2016. Like it all makes sense now. And it would appear that some of those lingering resentments that she didn't even realize was still there. And it was my fault. She's not wrong for having those resentments, but it really seems like just in the past couple of weeks, those have really gone away and things have changed way for the better. So it's really really important that people understand this. And that's why they do these classes at these big conventions. Like I said, this one was recorded at Frolicon in Atlanta, which is a very large convention. So what do you have? I know you've got probably something else to say on new relationship energy.
When you and I were attempting, of course, I got the NRE. And anyone going, oh my gosh, she loves Cauldron. Yes, I love Cauldron. We're very good friends. It is platonic love and work love. I'm his work wife. That's that.
Yep.
But no, my husband noticed the NRE that I was experiencing with you, and we actually discussed this, Cauldron and I, when it happened. My husband came to me and he goes, I feel like you have such a connection to Cauldron. I'm not worried about losing you, but I do need more of your attention and more of your time. And this was in the middle of the NRE that I was experiencing, but the love and respect I have for my husband and the wonderful, amazing communicator that he is, I said, okay, I will let Cauldron know, which I did.
Yep.
You and I discussed it.
Of course.
And we said, okay, we're going to back off. When my husband's at home, I'm going to be spending time with him. When he's at work, then you and I can make time for each other.
Mm-hmm.
That was that. That's a very important communication tool and tip. So if you are wondering how to approach your partner while watching them experience NRE with another person, take a page from my husband's book. Just step up, calmly, honestly communicate. This is the issue. This is what I need. What can we do to work together on this?
Yeah. And after going through it, even way before we ever listened to that episode of the Kinky Cast, it was very apparent that we were having this communication, but there was a breakdown between communication and actions. She was trying to call me out on it from time to time, but I wasn't seeing it. So if that takes place, you really have to trust your partner, which I did. I trusted her, and even with all of my years of experience, and this is where I say experience doesn't matter because you live in the moment. And yes, we are a big culmination of everything that we've gone through. But when you've got these natural chemicals pumping through your brain, that doesn't matter. What I should have done was trusted my wife to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to step back now. And I'm going to take a week off from this relationship or 2 weeks. And I should have communicated that to the other person and told her, hey, my wife is experiencing this. She's saying that I'm doing this. I'm not seeing it, but I need to take a break because no relationship is going to be healthy in my life if my relationship with my wife or any one of my partners is not healthy. It's going to roll over into every other relationship. So that's what I should have done. And that's what I'll do in the future, if only by her coming back to this episode and playing my words for me.
I will honestly encourage her very strongly to do that.
I don't see it as an issue, but I didn't see it as an issue before. And I certainly went into a frenzied state, and it was devastating. I mean, I did some very unintentionally shady things, I guess. I laugh about it because that's how I deal with it. To be honest, it kills me to admit it, but there we are. Because I know she's going to listen to this because she listens to every episode before I hit publish. All right. Well, I think we've really attacked frenzy or new relationship energy, which creates frenzy, pretty well. In fact, it looks to me like we've pretty well wrapped up polyamory.
Yes, but I would like to throw a note out there for the listeners who are going, oh my God, they didn't talk about households or any of those kind of structures. We're going to talk about that in another episode. We're going to retouch on those and really dig into those kind of things, packs and households and all that later on. I felt like those were too big of topics to squeeze into this episode together. So if you're going, oh my God, they didn't talk about it, we will talk about it just later.
Yeah, those are all interesting dynamics. So to just kind of hit on things, a quick review in things that were discussed here. Of course, there was the definition of polyamory, the types being open, closed, and closed. Morality versus traditional learnings. The myth of polyamory and being BDSM related, that every person is part of the lifestyle is part of polyamory. Absolutely not true. And then, of course, new relationship energy. So if you missed any of that, jump back and listen to it again. That is going to wrap up that conversation. I do have a final note or two outside of that topic. I would like to thank our executive producer, Jeremiah, our senior producer, Matt, And junior producers, K2SO, Fun Size's very own husband, Irish Mountain Dragon, and the Accidental Trucker. If you would like to become one of our show producers, go to our website, cauldronscrypt.com. You can get all of the information there for anything that you need. Show notes, purchasing t-shirts, stickers, pillows, whatever. And we do appreciate all of the support that you give us. It's because of that we're able to keep the show going. Second, BDSMcontracts.org. Thank you for your donations of the beautiful 25-page soft and hardbound MS and DS contracts. If you use the coupon code Cauldron20, that's KULDRIN20, you will receive a 20% discount on all your purchases there. And finally, Whipping Stripes, my own personal maker of leather and paracord impact toys. I don't have a discount code for you there because she is so inexpensive, she'd lose money to give you a 10% discount. She's phenomenal. She doesn't pay me to talk about her. In fact, neither does BDSMcontracts.org. I just love these people, and I want them to continue to do what they do in the community, so I will give them all the advertisement that I can. Next week on The Crypt, I may finally get my first death threat from the show.
Ooh, that should be fun.
Yep, but we will dive into it anyway. In the meantime, go to cauldronscrypt.com for show notes, how to subscribe information, and the link to our FetLife group so you can take part in the conversation and be eligible for giveaways. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I am in the process of making something for a giveaway, so definitely jump into the conversation.
Ooh la la.
Because you will not want to miss that.
I think I might know what it is.
You might. Our listeners don't.
Well, and since I'm ineligible to win it, then I guess it doesn't matter for me. All right. While you're there, while you're at cauldronscrypt.com, click on the Support Us tab to become one of our show producers, a Patreon supporter. You guys, like I've already said, are awesome, and we couldn't keep the show going without you. Fun Size, if somebody wants to get in touch with you directly, what's your email?
They can reach me at funsize@cauldronscrypt.com.
And I am Sir at cauldronscrypt.com. That will wrap it up. This has been Master Cauldron and Fun Size for cauldronscrypt.com. Unearth the truth.